see if we're live. It usually takes a little bit to show up here.
Yep, we'll see if we are live, and we'll let me know when we're good.
I'm refreshing, and it says live.
And we're live.
Yep, we're live.
Good. All right, everybody. This is the Doug and Fur Show. My name is Doug Petrozelli, and my partner in truth here.
Fur, as the name suggests.
And we are so excited today. We have a special guest. We actually have somebody who's running for political. For Congress.
Yeah,
He's
for
actually
Congress.
running for Congress. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself, and we're so happy that you're here. But I don't want to take too much. I want you to introduce yourself.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm Rod Dorilas, as Doug mentioned, and I'm running essentially for Congress to stop the radical left agenda from destroying our country. You know, as a Navy veteran, as a first-generation American, as a former Trump administration official, I just can't stand idly by while our leaders in Washington destroy everything that makes our country great. And so, just to give you a few examples, we have, radical left Democrats in Congress who I believe are taking away the American dream from the next generation. They are essentially, my parents came from Haiti. We'll speak about that a little bit. But, they came from Haiti and they were able to achieve their own American dream. They started their own small business, and they were able to raise 4 children while doing it. And so I think the American dream is worth fighting for. And to another point, we have in Washington, we have our leaders who are jeopardizing our national and economic security. They are essentially putting Americans last, and someone in my past, I stood up for America. I've definitely maintained that presence that we need to ensure that we hold up American values. And so, and also let me not forget the most important issue that touches at home for me is the issue with big tech, big government, and big business who are actively censoring our political opinion and political thought, and they're taking away civil liberties. And so someone who worked in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, I saw this playing out, especially on school campuses. And so I definitely feel like the free speech part of our American Constitution should be upheld and fought for. And so just to end this here, I'm just going to say I believe that we need to stick it to the other side, at least put our voices out so we could at least be heard and understood that why free speech is definitely there to fight for.
So, if you want to give him, if you want to check out his website, I'll put it on here. What is it?
It is roddorilas.com. Please go and visit, and you can see all about my stances. And
Here, you spell it.
Yeah, it's RODDORILAS.com.
Okay.
All right.
Nice and simple. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, I think you said it all. I think we can close up shop now. I mean, I love that. I gotta tell you, man, I'm so proud to have you here on this show. I gotta say, I think that I don't think there'd be much we disagree with. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you being here on the show. Not to say anybody else. We definitely love to have opposing views. But I am biased, just like anybody else, and I'll admit it. So anyway, I want to talk about all 3 of those topics, and the first one is the American dream. So let's just talk about real quick, what do you mean when we say the American dream? Because I think that's really important. Many words have meaning. Many things sound like one thing, but mean another. So I think it's really important that when we say statements, that we're actually going to really talk about and express. So I think one of the biggest things with the American dream, because that could mean a variety of things to a variety of people. I think that coming from where I believe you're coming from, where me and Fur are coming from, well, I'll say for us, we're coming from a libertarian right. I don't know exactly. It seems like you're in that place too, but I'll let you kind of discuss. What does it mean to the American dream to you?
So when I say the American dream, the best way I can put this out is to give you an example. I like to at least put forward some actual background information into exactly where I'm coming from. And so as a first generation American, my parents immigrated here from Haiti, right? And they were able to come here and they were able to achieve the American dream. That meaning being able to put forward have opportunities, economic opportunities, to put food on the table, to raise 4 children. But what did it for them pretty much was the opportunity with small business.
Right.
And small businesses, to me, are the backbone of the American economy.
Yeah.
And so whether you picture the white picket fence and becoming a homeowner and raising 4 children and being able to raise them and rear them the way that you see fit,
Right.
you know, people can define success all individually, but I believe the American dream is about being able to raise your children, be able to have that home ownership, to be able to make a living without suppression or oppression.
Right.
And so, you know, that's what our campaign is going to be about. It's all about preserving that, making sure that the American dream is alive and well for all.
Yeah,
Right.
so essentially, it's being able to go from the ground up, so from nothing to something.
Right.
And most people, especially first generation, they come from a country where they have nothing, or their opportunities are stripped by strict anti-human policies, right? And they're able to come here, and the opportunity that this land provides is, doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter where you're from, you have the opportunity to become something. And I think the other side, or the people that are on the other side would say, no, not everyone has an equal opportunity. Some people have an advantage over others. And in a sense, I understand. It's like, yes, obviously, if you're born with a millionaire father,
Right.
you obviously have a head start.
Absolutely.
But I think the issue comes when they say that, no, you have a head start because of your race, or you have a head start because of your gender, or anything like that.
Right.
What do you think about something like that? What do you have to say to that?
So again, another example would just simply be my parents, who literally, I kid you not, literally in one generation, in one lifetime, they went from picking crops in the fields of Florida to becoming small business owners.
And
You know,
son's running for Congress.
And now I'm able to sit here
Right.
before you and put forward, you know, this testimony. But
Right.
you know, he slept in the church's attic. My father did, and was able to overcome all those hurdles to become a business owner, raise 4 children while doing that. I
Right.
mean, we know how expensive kids are, and so
Right.
Yeah.
you know, and it's amazing that in this country
Right.
versus a lot of other countries, we know that this is not the same. In what other country do we see
Right.
people jumping leaps and bounds within one single generation?
Right.
I mean, literally the same. And so that is what I mean to have like the American dream, is to be able to come from nothing and become something.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's so great because when there's people that I would oppose, they talk about the European dream. And it's like, to me, I look at the European dream is to get on a welfare program. The American dream is that you can become Bill Gates. And there's a very big difference there. And I think one of the biggest things is freedom. We have freedom. We have low taxes. We have checks and balances that avoid and keep corruption at bay. It is not a perfect system, so I want to be clear about that.
Of course.
This is not utopia, but it doesn't get any better than this. In history, we can always become better, but there's never going to be a utopia. And that's the thing, is when there's true freedom, and that takes checks and balances on government, so there is no corruption, or limited corruption, I should say. And I think that's the thing that stands us out against other nations. We were a nation that was founded on small government and small government values. We're a nation that focused on not the collective, but the individual. And it was more of like putting the rights in our own hands, and I think that's even like the foundation of the podcast. I think that we could speak that for both of us, for that we are not looking for the government or for anyone else to change society. We're here, we're reaching South Florida, and we're changing our culture. We're men after our own destiny. We believe that, when there's a fatherless child in the community, it's on us to take care of that, to step in and to fill in. Because I, for one, hope that if I have a child one day, I hope that if I died, that Fur would step in and rear and be that masculine figure.
We'll see what happens.
Well, as I would for him, and as we have a multiple of guys in our community for that. And I think that that's the difference between our dream and that rivals the dream of any other nation.
I was gonna say something regarding that, the American dream, and you guys just keep going. I'll see if I remember.
Well, I guess on the same point,
Right.
just on the topic of first generation Americans, I want to say that as a first generation American myself, I think we come from a certain standpoint where we're able to see all this what we've already been discussing, right?
Right.
We're able to, you know, I certainly appreciate everything that America is and has to offer.
Yeah.
I know that many other immigrants and first generation Americans understand this as well, and we understand what it means to come from a socialist, authoritarian, or repressive regime. We understand what it means to come from an environment that has a lack of economic opportunity.
Right.
We understand what it means to come from an environment that provides little to no security, right? Or law enforcement.
Yeah.
And so we want to kind of, and that's what this campaign is going to be about.
Right.
It's going to be about upholding the American values that so dearly many immigrants come to rush here for.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people that have been born here or that have lived here their whole lives, basically, that's something they don't realize or that they take for granted, right? Like, you don't know what it's like to wake up and not know where your meal's going to come from. And it's not because your parents are poor and don't work hard, it's because the government takes it away.
Right.
And it's so hard to visualize that happening here. It's so hard to think like, hey, I can't work because the government doesn't let me work,
Right.
essentially. And when that actually becomes a reality, it's really scary. And I don't know. I think anybody who was born in Cuba and lived there throughout the Castro regime and who lived in Venezuela throughout the Chavez regime can attest to that. It's like I literally cannot work. I can't get food. I have one bread per week, type of deal. And it's like you have no idea how hard that is. And that's I think what people like us are trying so hard to preserve when we talk about the American dream. It's we want the opportunity to work.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about small government, we don't mean no government, we don't mean anarchy. What we mean is the government should protect your laws and your rights, and that's it. They should let you do whatever
liberty,
they want.
property, that's it.
Exactly. And that kind of life is, it allows you to have the most amount of freedom, and with the most amount of freedom, the most amount of prosperity.
That's what it equals. What produces prosperity? Like, that is something that we have to wrap our minds around. The reality is the freedom produces prosperity.
Like when you're told you have to pay health insurance, that's a freedom that's taken away. Yeah, it benefits everyone, but it's still a freedom that's taken away.
Right.
When you're told that you have to, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much you agree with Social Security or not. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But the point is, it's another freedom that you need to give up. That I'd have to do more research on. But the ideal, basically what I'm saying is that the more freedoms you give up, the less choices you have to make for yourself. And that's how opportunities are lost, right?
Right. And it becomes a less prosperous and less virtuous society because I become less virtuous if I believe someone else is going to do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't believe someone's going to do it for me, I am then pushed in. It's human nature. It's my nature to say I need to help that person because we will.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, I've liked getting those stimulus checks. It's like I didn't do anything and there's money in my account.
Oh, yeah.
I love it, but think about what that does for our society in the long run.
Right.
Right? Now people don't want to work, and if you don't work, they don't produce, and then you don't have the next iPhone. Right? So.
Right. And the thing is, the human being operates best out of freedom. When people are free, when a society is free, we operate best. We have to understand that there's always losses, but you have to take the losses with the good and bad. What does a totalitarian regime look like as opposed to what a free society looks like? Neither one are utopia. Which one's better? And I think that's something that's very important to realize.
So,
the biggest problem, though, I think, is the human being doesn't want to be free. The human being wants to be taken care of.
and I
It
think
takes virtue, it takes conversation, it takes being around other people in a social fabric that leads us to that. But social fabric, the number one killer of a social fabric is a big government that takes care of everybody.
Yeah, and I think you mean, I don't know if I speak for you, but when you're saying that you want to be taken care of, you mean subconsciously, right? Because if you ask someone, it's like, hey, do you want to be taken care of or do you want to be free? They're going to say, I want to be free, right? But I think everyone here can agree, like, I don't mind getting $1,400 in my bank account every month. And that's what you mean you want to be taken care of.
Right.
Right, so.
Because the reality is, borrower is slave to the lender. If I'm going to get the government to tell me, hey, $1,400 every month, and then somebody's, civil disobedience breaks out, let's just even say peaceful protesting, they can just take that away. It's just a means of controlling people. Dependency.
I'll just take away your $1,400. Yeah.
And that's what I am against,
So.
And I think that's where you stand, right?
Yeah, and I think this leads into your next point very well, which I think we can all agree that protecting small businesses is the best way to go about this. So how do you plan, like what policies do you plan to put in place that will protect small businesses and protect civil liberties and things like that?
Yeah, well, if you just think about how our government is structured. Um, Typically, the federal government is supposed to be a limited government, right? It's not supposed to be the end all be all.
Right.
And that's the opposite of what the Democrats, I believe, are doing now, because they're interjecting the big government on every issue they believe it just is essential. And what exactly is essential, right? We don't know.
Right.
But small businesses.
All work is essential.
Yeah, no, but small businesses though, they tend to have they're very, very difficult to run. If you ever had a small business, they're very difficult. My parents themselves owned a small business, and they were able to overcome a lot of hurdles. But a lot of small business owners, they face a monumentous overregulated field, right? Overregulation tends to be burdensome to a lot of the business owners. You have to get lawyers to go ahead and try to get past these. You got to do X, Y, and Z. And so small businesses really need to be backed by policies that allow them to flourish,
Right.
instead of policies that would inhibit their growth,
Right.
And whether it's big government or big business, it's coming from multiple fronts. And so the small business is what provided my family the opportunity to make a progression in society. They were able to achieve their American dream through small business ownership, and I believe millions of others are doing the same. And so why stifle that? We need to limit the government's interaction, and that's what my campaign is going to be about. It's about ensuring limited government in the affairs of small businesses.
Right. And I think that that's also so important because, what does a small business do? It doesn't just benefit and move your family into a wealthy and more prosperity, and which essentially makes you a more free, family unit there. But it's also good for the community. One, it provides a quality good or service. Small businesses typically do. If they don't provide quality, they usually go bankrupt because they don't have this big mass organization that they can take the loss on. The other thing is that as it grows, it's providing jobs. And that is, so it's not just good for that individual family, and it's like they're not ripping off society. They're adding to their own family and adding to a society and a community as well.
Yeah, it provides innovation. I mean, every Amazon started as a small business, right?
Right.
So, and I think one of the big things that you're talking about policy and regulations inhibiting small business, it's like, okay, pretend I have a nice little market called U Market, right? And I have a small stock and I don't make that much money as a business owner. Now, if I have all these government regulations on me, like all these taxes I need to pay and all these lawyers I need to hire and all these permits I need to get, which I'm not saying that all of that is bad, but when you put too much, it's like I can't make that business flourish, but Walmart can. Walmart can afford it, and so can Target. And now there is no small business. Now Walmart and Target control the market, and they can jack up their prices as high as they want. And we have to buy it. Like, I need to have my Coke, So
Coca-Cola, guys. Coca-Cola.
Just to be clear. So that's really good that what you're mentioning essentially is limiting those policies, because I'm sure every small business owner would love less policies, and even people who aren't even thinking of small business, maybe that's something that you would consider now when there are less policies, right? So
So did you have anything else to add on that? I do want to continue to move on, and we have other points to go, but I just wanted to make sure and give you the freedom to, kind of talk about the American dream, if there's anything else on it.
No, that's let's go to the next.
All right. Well, I did want to say one quick thing about the American dream. We think that there's this golden age and there was this time period where America was wonderful and perfect and beautiful, and it must have been a utopia. And that actual time didn't exist. Make America great again. That idea. I think that we can. I think we have been great. I think we are great. I think we have the ability to continue to be great.
yeah, I agree.
What is this thing that separated us? And one of the biggest things was our social interactions. I'm a beneficiary to be a part of a really great, tight-knit social group that I found in the church. And I think that's really important. And one of the biggest things that I value that I want to talk about, or just brief on, is that small government value also promotes churches to take care of communities, which adds church memberships, which adds nonprofits to start in communities and then takes care and they develop social, basically social clubs essentially.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that actually makes life worth living is when you have social interactions with people that you love, that you care about, that are in the neighborhood and the place that you live. What has destroyed that, and we see a steady decline with the massive, overreach, I would say, of the U.S. government of being involved with policies that sounded so good in the 1960s. And we see the steady decline, not just in churches, but in all type of social interactions, because then it was no need. The poor didn't have to go to a church anymore because the government was going to do it. The poor didn't have to go to nonprofit facilities because the government was going to take care of it. These places, people that had the money to start these organizations didn't have a reason to do it because they didn't have a need to fill. So it takes meaning, it takes purpose, it takes social interaction. All these things disappear because I just believe that everything the government touches, it destroys. So
And I think the church is actually that'd be a great point to talk about. I think we should do a podcast on that
on the church.
at some point. So
Yeah, we'll do that. But today we got more things to cover. So
I'd like to ask you a question before we continue.
Yeah.
So I hear you talking. You've mentioned this a few times. The Democrats, the radical left, and as we know, politics is a spectrum. I wouldn't say I'm this or I'm that. Everybody has different perspectives. Some people agree with abortion and agree with more guns, and some people agree with big government and also hate gun control and things like that. So this spectrum. When you say the Democrats or the radical left, what exactly do you mean?
Well, I would say that that's the easiest way for me to put this is that it's the individuals that are placing let's just say America first policies are the best ways to combat these knee-jerk reactions to certain events or needs that we believe. There's radicalism on both sides. There's radical folks on the left end of the spectrum, and then there's radical folks on the right. But there's always going to be a point where we're going to have to realize that the far fringes of these dynamics, both the left and the right, are things are tugging at stuff that really needs time for development. Government is never designed to put things forward without at least thinking through exactly what we're going to be putting forward and the policies and the effects of what we're going to be putting onto the people. It's not designed to have a snap reaction to what's happening on a daily basis. There needs to be deliberations.
Right.
There needs to be contemplations. There needs that, and that's I hate to admit that the fact that, but that's true that Congress is slow on a lot of things. They're supposed to deliberate on a lot of things, but when we have these policies that would overnight really change drastically the design or the what America really is, the identity of America, I see those policies as things that become dangerous to society.
So when you say like basically radical left or radical right or Democrats, what you mean are people that mostly agree with the policies that align with those views. So if a radical leftist is described as someone who agrees with policy A, B, and C, when you're talking about the radical left, you're talking about the people that agree with A, B, and C, right? Not necessarily someone who agrees with A, but maybe agrees with D or something like that, right?
Right. And I just want to say, I think it's important to call it out where it is, because there is a radical left, there is a radical right. On the right we have QAnon, we have the alt-right, people who I completely disagree with and disavow. And just because there may be a few things that we agree on politically, doesn't mean overwhelmingly that that I would go into any type of political agreement with them. And I think it's important to disavow that, no matter how little points that you disagree with. We have to believe in what is right, and right is right, even if everybody is against it, and wrong is wrong, even if everybody's for it. But on the right, it's fringe. We don't have any extremists. We have no alt-right. We have no QAnon conspiracy theorists in Congress.
Yeah, radicalism is
the radical left is, I don't want to say it is completely mainstream, but it is in the mainstream. there are members in Congress that hold socialistic, communist, I mean, they read, there's no doubt about it. What they're saying out loud is in the Communist Manifesto. You can read it. And communism has done nothing but produce suffering. And I think that's really important. We have both. And I'm not against fighting the radical right. The radical right is not a threat right now. It is a problem. I don't mind, we need to condemn it. I don't think that there's anybody that's going to vote that in. I sure hope not. I have hope for that. And if it ever is, I'll completely denounce it and be against it. You know.
I can definitely see how someone on the left though would disagree with you, and I would probably address that at some point in the future. I'll play
Yeah,
devil's
hopefully we
advocate
get
there.
her on the show. If you disagree, we'd love to have you on. I'd love to have that conversation.
Yeah, because I could see somebody saying like, oh no, there are these people that believe in radical right theories and they are in Congress, and not everybody in Congress is radical left. I could see that happening. I could see people calling and saying something like that. So if you have that to say, we'd love to have you so we can have that discussion. And if nobody comes, I'll play devil's advocate.
We'll do it.
I'll oppose you there. So.
All right. So next, we want to talk about America's national and economic security. I just want to talk about those points with you. That's very important to me. I'm not going to hide that I voted for Donald Trump both times, and those are my biggest issues. Is the economy and our national security. That's my biggest thing, because if I have that, really the sky's the limit for me in this nation, and I think everyone else who lives in it. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, like so I mentioned that a lot of people seeking to come into our country are trying to two main things that are usually at the common denominator, right? The forefront of their minds. They're coming here for two things: security, meaning physical. They won't be able to sit there and get robbed every day, and the crime rate skyrocketing. They're able to actually live a long, healthy life. They have this perception to have that here, and that we have that here. And so, national security provides security for its people, right? And then you have the economic factor of things. If your country, if your nation is not providing the mechanism by which to make a living, right? You're going to look elsewhere to find that opportunity. But we have both of that here, right? We have the national security, we have the economic opportunity. But national security can be very broad too. I mean, things that's happening worldwide, right? Because what happens overseas, you have folks who are seeking to take down America, who are seeking to take down, because we're at the top, right? What's at the top must come down. At some point, they're trying to facilitate that. And so our national and economic security, I feel like, is being jeopardized, is being played around with by those in power right now, which is the Democrats. They're not taking the border crisis seriously. They're not taking threats by China and Iran seriously. And so we can't put the Americans last or second to any of these things. We have to make sure, we have to put forward stances that ensure that America is always being placed first. And so that's something that I'm always going to be a champion of. That's something that my campaign is all about. It's about placing the American first. We want to ensure that they have a way to live, make a living. We want to ensure that the small business owners, who are nearly half of those of the economy, right? It's the backbone of the economy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And once you destroy that, our economy will be in peril. And so, and just quickly, give you an example. When I worked with at the Department of Commerce, with the Secretary of Commerce, he made sure that we were putting forward policies that ensured that our economy was a robust and prosperous economy for all. And we saw the biggest unemployment rate, especially with the minority communities. We ensured that China was not. At least we fought back against China to ensure that they were playing by the rules. We saw how China was putting forward different tactics to realize themselves as the new, what they call the One Belt, One Road initiative. That they are the sun within the universe, and all the other planets, the other countries revolve around them. And they're facilitating that by advancing themselves by stealing our intellectual property. They are making sure that they're not playing by the international rules. They're making America anti-competitive, and frankly, previous policies by the previous president and currently this president, Joe Biden is actually putting forward policies that put America last. We have to ensure that China's being held accountable,
Right.
and that's something that we need to make sure those in Washington are taking very seriously.
I'm gonna interrupt for a second. I think some people say that they can hear static, but it looks good on my end. Can anybody let me know if they still hear static?
Yeah, just write it to us in the comments. But I do want to talk about that real quick. So that's one of the things that I find a little bit frustrating. When you see a threat, you have to also realize, is it a credible threat? Can this threat actually cripple us? Can it damage us? Can it take us over? We have to assess the threat. Just like we're talking about the radical right, we don't have much power. The radical right does not have much power, thank God, in this country. Hopefully continues. It's not a threat. That doesn't mean we don't look at it. That doesn't mean we don't keep it in check. One of the things that I see from politicians that would lean, I don't even want to say left, because I think some liberals have a decent understanding, but I would say more on the hard left, view China as a non-threat. That yeah, it's a threat. They're not really our friends, but they'll never come against us. They'll never be able to come up against us. They're already doing things. They're infringing on sovereign nations right now, on Hong Kong, on Taiwan. They're imposing their will upon Japan. Free states. No, these are our enemies, and I think that needs to be called out. And I'm really thankful that I think calling these things out, because I think that's vitally important. If you love freedom, if you believe in freedom, we have to stand for those values. I think one of the things is that people on the hard left agree with the way China does their policies, the way they do their government, the way they have top-down control, and the way they do things. And I gotta tell you, the life that the average Chinese person lives is not the life the average American lives. I don't want to live like that. I do believe that we have values that surpass and have a better standard of living, of freedom, of human rights, even for that matter. And I think that needs to be called out. And I think that's super, super important. So I just want to thank you for sharing that. I think that we do need to look at these as actual threats. When you are stealing our intellectual property, when you're going out of your way to mess with trade of other nations, and just pretty much when the U.S. says that requests that you don't do that anymore and you completely blow it off, these are things that need to be addressed. One of the things that Stalin said, who those who don't know, he was a communist leader of the USSR. He said, "Push where there's mush." And if that's the whole idea of just continuing to either physically or even symbolically take land where no one's going to give you pushback. And the point is that this is a nation that is exactly doing that. And I think that's really important to call that out. So I really do appreciate those ideas and thinking about that, because I don't believe this country is our friend by any means.
Unfortunately, I'm not too well versed on international policy right now, so I can't confirm or deny any claims. But tell me if I'm wrong, off base here. But I think sometimes the left sees they or like people on the other side, when the right says China's our enemy, or there's a border crisis, what they are hearing us saying is we're anti-humanitarian. We only care about Americans, and we don't care about Mexicans, Chileans, Hondurans, Chinese. We don't care about those people. We only care about America. And I don't think that that's what we're saying. I mean, I can see why somebody on the left would think that, but I think what we're saying is that there are so many people in the world, and we can focus only on a small subset of people right now, and we can only control this subset of people, we can only control the decisions that this country makes, because that's where we have the power. We can't control the policies of Mexico or the policies of China. So when they try to control our policies, or they try to interfere with our policies, we need to put a stop to that.
Right.
And say, like, hey, we're going to try our best to control our country, and if you would like to come to our country legally, there's a process you can follow. And we do think your life is important, and you are a human life. But unfortunately, there's only so much we can do. I think that's what we're saying. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, essentially that's what it is. It's that when I say putting Americans first, it's just simply if you look at the bottom effect, right? If you look at two different individuals. One that you have a sworn loyalty to, which is your own citizens, to protect and defend them, to ensure that they are being looked after, and you're subjecting them to outside forces or others around the world that needs to be seriously contemplated and weighed, because we have a primary duty, and that's to our own citizens. It's not to, I'm just being frank, it's not to be, we shouldn't care about those, but we have a lot of issues within our own border that needs addressing. A lot of the money that is going towards, housing other individuals what about the issues of the homelessness across America?
Right.
What's going on in California? There's a huge issue with homelessness.
Oh, yeah.
And we have plenty of that. There's a lot of domestic issues that need to be addressed, but yet we're so focused abroad and what's going on with the sense that we're not taking care of the rest of the world.
Yeah, you're saying take care of home first and then the world, because if your house is in order, then you can help others.
Well, here's the thing is, if you were elected by the American people, it is to do things that are in favor of the American people. I don't vote for somebody that is going to put, someone else's interest over mine. Their duty, their sworn duty, is to protect and serve the Constitution, what that Constitution is for this nation. I think it's a really great idea to go there and influence other nations, but if they don't want to do that, I don't know what exactly you're expecting from us.
You're saying take care of the people who voted for you first, take care of your house,
Right.
and then we can help others. Helping
Absolutely.
others is good, but we want to fix
And-
our own
and-
house first, right? So.
And the only way for any nation to move forward is to put checks and balances in so that a constitutional order can take place without corruption.
And I think it's good that was clarified, because if you're a voter that's on the fence or even on the left side of opposing, so if you're a Democrat and you're opposing Republicans, I think it's important that they see that we're humans. We care about people just as much as you do, and we have a reason and we have logic behind the decisions that we want to make, right? So I think that's very important, and I think it's good.
Yeah.
Would you like to move on to the next?
Yeah, I just wanted to give Rod any more. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add on that? Because we are on a time. We only get an hour, so I just wanted to make sure if you had anything else that was on that you felt was a strong point that you wanted to let me know to express about our national and economic security.
Yeah, certainly. So I just wanted reiterate that our economic security is something that's very, very important, and it's sort of tethered to the national security stuff, but the economic security hits home for a lot of folks, because people like my father or my mother, who started off working at a fast food restaurant, and my dad in the fields picking vegetables, they understood that with hard work, right, with perseverance, with motivation, with just putting a little bit more sweat into their brow, they will be able to achieve that. But what happens if all of that is gone? What happens if there's an over-reliance on government assistance? What happens if there's essentially the manufacturing jobs that should be at home being sent off overseas?
Right.
We shouldn't put policies forward that kill opportunity, right? We should make sure that jobs are remaining here, and we're remaining prosperous, right? And so that is what I would like to see happen in Washington. That's something that many families like mine, first-gen families as well, members in that first-gen category, they want to ensure that their kids are going to have that same opportunity. And so we got to push forward and make sure those policies are being heard.
All right. So talk about businesses. Let's talk about big tech, big businesses, and censorship. And I just want to let you open that up. Like, what's your thoughts when someone brings up big tech, big businesses, and censorship? You can take that all together. You can pull it apart. But I just want to hear your thoughts when someone presents that to you. Oh, we need to go after big businesses, big tech, and talk about censorship. So.
Well, I would say what initially comes to mind for when you mention any of those categories, whether it's big tech, big government, big business, the main thing that I see is that we're seeing an erosion of our individual freedom, of our civil liberties.
Yeah.
We're seeing an erosion of our ability to own a gun, or whether you name which amendment, whether it's first, second, fourth, fifth, you name it. A lot of that are being eroded, not only at the hands of big government, but also now being perpetrated by the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
That's big tech, big business.
Right.
And never before we've seen so many big businesses who are entering the fray and asserting, essentially overriding democratic processes.
Right.
But that's what comes to mind for me, and I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed. I think that's something that I would like to do if I was elected to Congress.
Right. Right. So what about this? Because this is one of the biggest conflicts because it's where does the government's role come in with interfering with private businesses? Because for people that would be on my side would say, the libertarian right, the government has no role in interfering with private businesses. And that's generally how I feel. But this is something I definitely had to think and challenge myself on. And I want to get to my thoughts, but I want to ask you, where is that line drawn when it comes to government interfering with private businesses?
So, before you answer that,
Yeah.
I'd like to give a little context here,
Yeah.
which I think would give more scope to the question. When we talk about our rights, specifically the First and Second Amendment, because I think that they're very important. I mean, I definitely do believe that the pen is mightier than the sword, and that's been proven time and time again.
Yeah.
However, the sword backs up the pen.
It does.
So I think a lot of times we look at our First Amendment right is so important. We need the ability to speak freely. Second Amendment, not as important. That's what the Democrats tend to think, right? They're like, oh, Second Amendment is not as important. And they don't realize, like, hey, we have to get background checks. We need to spend a lot of money. We need to essentially jump through hoops to exercise our Second Amendment. And even if, like, in states like California, right, you're going to need to ask the government for a license to conceal carry your weapon, and they will only give it to you if you have a good enough reason. That's how limited your Second Amendment is. However, do you need a license to post on Twitter? Do you need a license to or like, do you need to pay the government for a background check to, have a Facebook account? No, you don't. So your First Amendment is much more freed than your Second Amendment. And when we're talking about these amendments and these liberties, now the government obviously is stepping in and eroding our Second Amendment, but now, since the government cannot erode our First Amendment, it's being eroded through private companies, and that will give context to your question, like, should the government step in and not allow that? And if so, what justification do you have for that?
Well, if you look at the example I constantly give, and that's the small business ownership or entrepreneurship, we cannot have an overburdensome, regulated environment where the government, whether they believe they're being, they have the best interest in mind or not, whether it's malicious or otherwise. Once you see this happening, you got these small businesses who are being drowned out. It feels like you can't come up and breathe. You feel like you're being oppressed, and so a lot of people cave in. You have the First Amendment, where free speech portion of that allows us to come up with new thought, right? We come up with different stances that allow us to express our minds, whether we believe whether it's correct or not, whether whoever it's subjective, you believe it's the right stance to take. But small businesses encapsulate all of it. I mean, you can almost view it in the conceptualized way of seeing it as small business as being a person. If you're being oppressed by the government, it's never good. And so essentially what's going to happen is that we need to enforce what the Constitution mandates, and that's a limited role of government.
Right.
Limited. It was never designed in a fashion to be the end-all, be-all. It was never designed to be one solid government. You have the states and you have the federal government.
Right.
The federal government's role was primarily designed to address things foreign,
Right.
to be the ambassador. But now we see over time that a lot of this has transformed vastly, where the federal government has taken up so much power, and there's this huge administrative state,
Right.
right? And so once you give the government a certain ability to do something, to enforce something. It's hard. I'll tell you what, it's hard to take that back. They're not going to easily give that back.
Right.
And so, myself, I think there's a lot of folks in Congress right now who are pushing for more and more and more power for the federal government and to impugn what they want on other states that do not think like they. The United States as a whole, the experiment that the United States is there's a reason why each state has some sovereignty to do what they need to do. It's not absolute, but they have sovereignty to do things because we believe, essentially, the founding fathers believe that one state can experiment, and whether they succeed or fail, it provides other states and the rest of the country an idea of what route to go down.
Right.
But if we have one government deciding everything, that's an issue. And so people need to understand, at least for myself, people understand that this is a dangerous road. We need to think deeply and long about whether we should give up certain rights to an all-powerful federal government.
Right.
That's pretty good. I think that's super important, and that's something people don't realize. Every state is different. In fact, every city is different, right? That's why you hear Florida man, you don't hear Wyoming man, right?
Right.
They're different, and they need to be governed differently. And I think when we give the federal government so much power, now everything is governed the same. And the law that's going to work in Wyoming is not going to work in Florida because people in Florida just don't want that law, or they don't operate well under that law compared to California or Wyoming. And I think that's why states' rights are so important, right? And
Right.
that's what you're saying here. And even further than that, cities and municipalities,
Right.
they have much more influence on your life. The federal government's not going to tell your city to come and change your water line, right? When it's bursting and the street is flooding.
We sure
That's going to
don't.
be your local. Exactly. That's going to be your local government, and it all depends on where you live and the people that you're around. And I think that's what you're getting at, right? Is the federal government needs to have limited power, and then the power needs to go top down, then more to the state and more to the city,
Right.
so that they can make decisions based on local population, right? So
Right. I think one of the biggest things is for a free and decent society, we need a separation. We need a division of power. Consolidated power is always bad. And I think our government, our founders were very brilliant in setting that up. We're not, we can always disagree and we can always debate, things that have happened in the past of consolidated power or whatever. But I think as a whole, our nation is really great, the way our governments are set up for the division and separation of powers. That really, really helps prevent, against a tyrannical regime from rising up. However, when it comes to businesses can become powerful.
yeah,
And I do believe it's the government's role at some point. This is the conclusion I came to, because I do want the government to stay out of business. I want a business to do what a business needs to do and what's good for that business. If it's not affecting life, liberty, and property, that business needs to do what they want to do. And if they suck, then we all get to vote as people with our dollars, put them out of service.
Mhm.
And I believe that is what's best for humanity, and that's what's best for society, what's best for the individual. However, when a business does get too big, when a business does get too powerful, just like a government, it can become tyrannical with power. And
Mhm.
power breeds corruption. That's just a reality. It's human nature. That's never going to change. And that's why we also have laws against monopolies, where the government can step in and break those up only when absolutely necessary. Now, I know that that's dangerous. I know that that can be a loophole for a government to then say, make anything a cause for a need to intervene.
Yeah.
The point is, that's why we have Congresses that vote on things, and that's why we, hopefully, we have to have faith in the American system. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things when I see big tech being able to essentially, when Parler got shut down, that was actually a scary moment for me, because that was an individual platform. This wasn't just, them abusing Section 230 and taking things like this show off there because they said it was offensive or whatever I forget what the exact loophole was in Section 230. That they could take things off because it, didn't abide by their policies and they were protected by that code, which I really hope gets reformed. These are businesses that are able to shut down an independent platform.
Yeah. So
That is dangerous. That is something that does need to come down with the force of the state. And I'm very libertarian. I'm very government don't intervene on things. Let us do things as people. But when there's too much power, you don't want one day for that business to have more control and more power than the government.
Yeah, well, it's like you were saying, right? And to back up your point, the government's role is like liberty and property, and a company, a big company, can essentially strip you of liberty, right? If you don't have the choice of where you need to buy gas anymore, there's only one gas station, and they
Right.
jack up their prices to $10 a gallon. What are you going to do? Walk everywhere?
Right.
So that's where the government needs to say, no, you can't buy this business or whatever. And they're protecting your liberty. Now, with the way tech works, these tech companies, they could strip you of your liberty to your First Amendment right, because nobody goes to the street to preach anymore, right? They post on Facebook and they post on Twitter. Imagine if you go a step further, right? Imagine if the companies like Mobile, Sprint, or AT&T or whatever, they put auto-tracking software on your text messages, and anytime you're talking about something controversial like abortion or gun control or whatever, they don't send your text. They block your text from being sent. Are you going to use the argument that, hey, they're an independent company, they can do whatever they want, right? When does the government need to step in? And I think they need to step in to defend your liberty there, and I think that that's what backs up your point, and that's where you stand, right?
So, to that same point, I would say, to identify the issue for your audience, right? The Constitution, and I don't want to bore you with this, but it's important. The Constitution provides, the amendments to the Constitution provides you with certain civil liberties, whether it's the first, second, third, fourth. They're all very, very important. I encourage everyone to go and read the Constitution. But the Constitution, the amendments to it, the civil rights that are afforded to us are all they were designed, they were implemented to provide protection against who? The government.
Right.
Not against a private citizen on another private citizen. That, to a lot of folks, can be an issue. We can see how now our Constitution, the way it's designed, is being really, really tested, because we have those small collective individuals at the top, those oligarchs, holding control of these power, these big governments. Now, as a private citizen, being able to weigh and put a lot of emphasis on what they believe should be right, and are essentially governing. Now you have private individuals governing the country.
Right.
And so we need to figure out a solution to this. I mean, there's antitrust laws, there's different things that are out there, but it's very difficult. The Constitution was designed to protect the infringement of government action, not private. And so now we need to address this going forward. Our generation is going to be that generation. We're being put to the test, and so that's what my campaign is going to be about, is hoping we can put forward issues or put forward solutions that can at least get us past this test in time.
Yeah, because in the 1780s, right, there was no Walmart and there was no Twitter. So the Constitution wasn't designed to protect against that, but it was made to be flexible and to have people like you and other people that would essentially run for Congress and be in Congress to make laws to keep up to date with the times, right? When Twitter comes around and Facebook, and like these new laws are going to help to continue to push society and our country to be more prosperous and to keep on defending our liberties. At this point, not even from the government, but from very, very giant corporations, right? Do you have anything more to say on that?
Yeah, no, that was it. We're actually almost running out of time, and I wanted to give Rod, anything that you wanted to say, any final or closing things, because we are running out. I can't believe.
Well, I was gonna ask, like, maybe with the last couple minutes you have, like, I think people like practical application, right? So if you have any practical points, like, this is what I plan to do, this is what I plan to back up, what exactly, like, are you running behind? Like, I don't know if you want to get into that, or
Well,
the practicality of it.
so, I want to remind people that we're all, if we just actually just put our differences aside and able to understand that we're all Americans, that the flag, I understand that there's free speech, First Amendment protections to how you use that, but I'm seeing an incline of folks who believe that the American flag means a certain thing, and that it's unpatriotic to don the American flag now. It's more popular. I hate to say this, but it's patriotic to be unpatriotic now.
Right.
And so I would just say to your listeners that if we find common ground in something, And I think that's being, we're all from the same nation. We all want to see each other succeed. We're all under one nation, one tribe. We can see that, we can put that aside and say, okay, now let's talk about the issues and understand where it's not necessarily that we are just foreign to each other. We have things that we to kind of guide us going forward. And so that is something that I would like for us to go forward to understand, that we as Americans can get past all this nonsense. And so just, if you can, just give me a look at roddorilas.com and let me know your thoughts, so you can join our team. There are what I believe to be crazy radical agendas that we need to address, but I'm open to discussion to hear your thoughts, and I would love to at least give you my perspective on things.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so
good,
much.
yeah.
So that's going to be a wrap for the show. Please check out Rod Dorilas. You can find him on Instagram. You can find him on his website.
Oh, I didn't put his
preferably.
Instagram. Would you want me to?
It's the same as in my website. Rod
Oh,
Dorilas.
okay.
Yeah, you
Just
can
at
find-
Rod Dorilas.
Just add Rod Dorilas on Instagram. We're really happy to have you on the show. Just anybody else, if you have topics or ideas for the show, please, DM me or DM Fur. We'd love to hear you. If you want to be on the show, maybe you have a different thought or opinion than we do. We still want to have you on the show. We're going to treat you well. We're going to treat you nice.
If you're a
so
Democrat running for Congress.
yeah, we'd love to have you on too. So yeah, thank you so much, and I want to thank Rod so much for being here. Thank you for having us. Maybe we'll have you on when you're a congressman. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, right?
I'm believing that. I'm believing for it. Vote for this guy. No, check him out for real. I want you to make up your own mind. But this is the Doug and Fur Show. It's been a great time. We'll see you later.
See ya.